Greetings, everyone. Hello, and welcome to Chilliteracy. Happy Wednesday. It is actually Wednesday this week and not Thursday. I got very confused last week. But it is Wednesday. Life feels normal again. Hooray. How are we all doing? Hope you're all well. And I hope those of you who were at the Longest John stream enjoyed it. Yes. Happy Wednesday indeed. I have a completely numb tip of a couple of my fingers on my right hand because I have been being an incredibly diligent sister and making my brother some Warhammer mini stands. I have made him 3 and then took a long break between making them because I was busy, and then have remembered that I still have 3 yet to make, and it involves a lot of foam cutting, so I've been cutting things and thus have a dead finger. You're 34? No, 43 months old, almost halfway to a year, exactly. That's lovely, yeah. They do, to be fair, the ones I have done look really good in his, bookcases that he stores his Warhammer minis in, and we want to put, LED lights above them, so they've got some sort of cool down lighting. But yeah, basically he has a double Billy bookcase from IKEA with doors that he houses all of his various Warhammer minis, and I said, well, I should probably make you some cool shelf inserts for those. What do you need? And he was like, well, I need 3 that are desert themed, and then 3 that are sort of snowy and rocky. I was like, okay. The desert themed ones I did first, and I'm very glad they did because they were an absolute nightmare. Because turns out fake sand, pain in the arse, gets everywhere. But yes, I'm on the rock ones now. What? The Johns agree that I need to be a stream guest again. Oh, do they? Well, I'll see when I'm next free. I don't know when their next streams are, and they often coincide with me being in other countries, which frankly is rude for them. Rude of them. Hello, my brain is going. Imagine fake sand being like glitter. It's not. To be fair, it's not actually too bad because it's thick. It's actually slightly thicker than actual sand, I would say. But you have to spray glue and then put more on, and then put the sand on and then spray more over the top. So it can just get everywhere. It's a bit of a nightmare. You scrape your knuckle hacksawing the legs of a shelf. Ooh, ow. Did you scrape it on the saw or did you scrape it otherwise? Ouch. Sand tip, put PVA glue where you need it, then dip the piece in the actual sand. You see, I would do that, Yoru, except the piece is actually quite big. The foam I'm cutting is A4 size, and I'm sort of doing it in a tiered fashion. I'll probably put a picture on the Discord or something if I can find one that I took. So you can't really, I needed them completely covered with sand. So, yeah, I couldn't really dip the whole thing in. So I basically just did a base coat of acrylic that was basically the same colour as the sand. And then thingied it with sand. Litterbox to the rescue. I did do it on a very old tray, which sort of helped. But, yes, it was a bit of a faff. But yes, I hope you're all doing well. My triumph of the week, which I'm sure Parola especially will be very impressed with. I bought a jigsaw yesterday and then I completed it 2 hours later. It was an 1,000-piece jigsaw, and I guess I was just in the zone. I was like, oh, I fancy buying a jigsaw. So I bought a jigsaw and I didn't really expect to do it the same day. But I did. So to be fair, I had a little bit of help to begin with, and then my helpers got bored and wandered off. So I pretty much completed it myself. Your stream decided to buffer just as you mentioned my name. Oh, sorry, Parola. Jigsaw, good stuff. But it was one of the. So I think Sam and I posted a picture, or Sam posted a picture of the one he and I did end of last year, I think. Which was a Dracula one. And basically Waterstones, what is a bookstore in the UK, a chain of bookstores, they do well, I don't think it's them specifically, but they tend to stock jigsaws that are based on various authors. So they have a Dickens one, a Shakespeare one, an Austen one, a Dracula one, which is obviously not an author, but it's a story, a Bridgerton one, which frankly I'm mortified that even exists on the same level as Shakespeare and Dickens. How could they? It's fair. People enjoy what they enjoy. And also an Oscar Wilde one, and I decided that the Oscar Wilde one looked fun, so I bought the Oscar Wilde one and then completed it. So yeah, now I have another jigsaw that I've done. But thankfully, a very good friend of mine, she's got a proper jigsaw problem. We're just on jigsaw talk now. I think it's a perfectly decent thing to talk about. I found out yesterday, she has 10. She has 10 jigsaws. 10. Like, this is 10 in the last, 3 months. At least 3 of which she has not done. Because I went to round hers, and I started, it was one of the backwards ones. That's like, the picture they give you isn't the actual jigsaw, the wasgij or whatever they're called. And the picture they give you is like the opposite of what the jigsaw is, kind of thing, or what the people in the jigsaw are looking at. And I got really quite far in that. All the edge pieces were done. A good portion of it was done. And then I went home after seeing her. And she said, oh, I'll try and do it this week. And if I don't, I will scrumple it up and put it back in the box and never think of it again. And she just gave up on it. And I was mortified because I spent 3 hours on that damn jigsaw. So I'm very, very disappointed with her. So I'll have to send her mine. You're working on making some jigsaws. Oh, hang on. Do you mean actually solving jigsaw? Right, okay. For some reason my brain was like, you're making jigsaws? Oh, Smallcock had the same thought. You're kind of tempted to start one too, but you think you want to remain horizontal. You can absolutely lie down and do a jigsaw. I have definitely done that before. You support Bridgerton on principle, even if you don't actually like the show or the books. I have not seen the show, and I have not read the books. To be fair, I don't know that much about it. What does the Shakespeare one have for the picture? I think it's just... So these ones, they're sort of... lots of different references to different parts of an author's oeuvre or life. So it'll be... I don't think I've done the Shakespeare one. It's probably the next one to buy. But it's going to have lots of different characters from different plays and stuff in it. You used to make Warhammer stuff for a living, Yoru. That's very cool. That is cool. Andy, get bored and wander off describes 90% of your jigsaw puzzle experience. Fair. You like romance as genre, but Julia Quinn isn't your taste. You're one of the big names of the genre. Fair enough. Yeah, I don't know. You might have to VOD the stream because it's struggling. No, Parola. Well, if you need to VOD, absolutely VOD away and enjoy puzzle stuff. Do what you need to do. But I shall see if I can find a picture of the jigsaw, what I took, because I was very proud of myself. Doopy-doopy-doo. There we go. Ta-da! I have posted a picture of the Oscar Wilde jigsaw that is on a cutting board, a sewing cutting board, which turns out are really great things to do jigsaws on, because they're often not the colour of the jigsaw, and they're slightly bigger, or this one at least is slightly bigger than a 1,000-piece jigsaw. It's great. Imagining a Shakespeare jigsaw as a fight. Yeah, it's exactly that kind of thing. So yeah, similar to the Oscar Wilde one I've just posted. But yes, tonight we shall be doing some more thing. Barchester Towers, which isn't northern, but I always want to say it in a northern accent. And I'm trying to think of what happened last time. Oh yeah, last time we had some drama. because people turned up at the bishop's party and it was all very dramatic and there was lots of gossip and, oh, good Lord, what's going on? Everybody's unhappy with everybody else, and Mr. Harding has allegedly, well, sort of refused the position at the place he used to work, the hospital, that, yeah, Mr. Slope said, oh, you should come back. And he has refused it on the grounds of he will not do it on the new conditions what the bishop has set, except the bishop hasn't set them, has he? Mr. Slope has. So, yeah, that's kind of where we're at, I believe. Also, hello, Lady Mephistopheles, welcome in. You used to have a green craft mat like that and it got lost in a move? No, they're handy, they're really good. Not that I do a lot of crafting, but I steal other people's craft mats when I need them. But, yes. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I need to say. Apart from yawn. No, I don't think so. Again, might be a slightly shorter one tonight because I have been talking a lot this week. I had to take a choir rehearsal yesterday, and on Saturday I have my choir's concert in which I have decided to sing an aria, which, I mean, I had entire control over whether I sang that or not, and I decided I shall, and then got slightly pissed off with the first sopranos last night at rehearsal and shouted at them a little bit. Maybe my voice isn't the best. But yes, you're very tired today, so don't know how long you'll be able to stay. That is totally fine. Stay as long as you need and go get rest, because rest is important. Good luck, thank you. Yeah, I haven't sung like an operatic aria in concert for a while, and I've missed it. So I'm doing one of my faves, which, if anybody knows any opera here, it is what is it? What am I singing? De Vieni non tarda from Marriage of Figaro by Mozart, which is my favourite opera. It's an absolute banger. Sopranos being a pain? Never. Yeah, it's one specific soprano who hasn't looked at any of her music and wasn't watching me. Sorry. I will not rant. But yes, so Barchester Towers is getting very gossipy and it's great. So if we are... No, that is not the chapter we're on. Hang on a second. There we go. Oh god, these bookmarks are too big for this book. It's very awkward. But yes, if we are all sitting comfortably, if we all have, a hot beverage of some description, although frankly it's getting warm now, so a cold beverage is also legit. If your brains are all functioning, mine is not. Cool beverage, warm cat. That is a good... What's the word? Compromise. Oh yeah, warm cat, what decided to hijack your laptop, as I saw you say earlier. Oh dear. But yes, if we are all comfortable, we shall begin. Or continue, rather, with Barchester Towers by Anthony Trollope. Chapter 14. The New Champion. The Archdeacon did not return to the parsonage till close upon the hour of dinner, and there was therefore no time to discuss matters before that important ceremony. He seemed to be in an especial good humour, and welcomed his father-in-law with a sort of jovial earnestness that was unusual with him when things on which he was intent were going on as he would have them. "It's all settled, my dear," said he to his wife, as he washed his hands in his dressing-room, while she, according to her wont, sat listening in the bedroom. "Arabin has agreed to accept the living. He'll be here next week." And the Archdeacon scrubbed his hands and rubbed his face with a violent alacrity, which showed that Arabin's coming was a great point gained. "Will he come here to Plumstead?" said the wife. "He has promised to stay a month with us," said the Archdeacon, "so that he may see what his parish is like. You'll like Arabin very much. He's a gentleman in every respect, and full of humour." "He's very queer, isn't he?" asked the lady. Well, he is a little odd in some of his fancies, but there's nothing about him you won't like. He is as staunch a churchman as there is at Oxford. I really don't know what we should do without Arabin. It's a great thing for me to have him so near me, and if anything can put Slope down, Arabin will do it. The Reverend Francis Arabin was a fellow of Lazarus, the favoured disciple of the great Dr. Gwynne, a high churchman at all points. So high, indeed, that at one period of his career he had all but toppled over into the cesspool of Rome. A poet and also a polemical writer, a great pet in the common rooms at Oxford, an eloquent clergyman, a droll, odd, humorous, energetic, conscientious man, and as the Archdeacon had boasted of him, a thorough gentleman. As he will hereafter be brought more closely to our notice, it is now only necessary to add that he had just been presented to the vicarage of St. Awold by Dr. Grantley, in whose gift as Archdeacon the living lay. St. Awold is a parish lying just without the city of Barchester. The suburbs of the new town, indeed, are partly within its precincts, and the pretty church and parsonage are not much above a mile distant from the city gate. St. Awold is not a rich piece of preferment. It is worth some 300 or 400 a year at most, and has generally been held by a clergyman attached to the cathedral choir. The Archdeacon, however, felt, when the living on this occasion became vacant, that it imperatively behoved him to aid the force of his party with some tower of strength, if any such tower could be got to occupy St. Awold's. He had discussed the matter with his brethren in Barchester, not in any weak spirit as the holder of patronage to be used for his own or his family's benefit, but as one to whom was committed a trust, on the due administration of which much of the Church's welfare might depend. He had submitted to them the name of Mr. Arabin, as though the choice had rested with them all in conclave, and they had unanimously admitted that, if Mr. Arabin would accept St. Awold's, no better choice could possibly be made. If Mr. Arabin would accept St. Awold's, there lay the difficulty. Mr. Arabin was a man standing somewhat prominently before the world, that is, before the Church of England world. He was not a rich man, it is true, for he held no preferment but his fellowship, but he was a man not over-anxious for riches, not married, of course, and one whose time was greatly taken up in discussing, both in print and on platforms, the privileges and practices of the Church to which he belonged. As the Archdeacon had done battle for its temporalities, so did Mr. Arabin do battle for its spiritualities, and both had done so conscientiously, that is, not so much each for his own benefit as for that of others. Holding such a position as Mr. Arabin did, there was much reason to doubt whether he would consent to become the parson of St. Awold's, and Dr. Grantley had taken the trouble to go himself to Oxford on the matter. Dr. Gwynne and Dr. Grantley together had succeeded in persuading this eminent divine that duty required him to go to Barchester. There were wheels within wheels in this affair. For some time past, Mr. Arabin had been engaged in a tremendous controversy with no less a person than Mr. Slope, respecting the apostolic succession. These two gentlemen had never seen each other, but they had been extremely bitter in print. Mr. Slope had endeavoured to strengthen his cause by calling Mr. Arabin an owl, and Mr. Arabin had retaliated by hinting that Mr. Slope was an infidel. This battle had been commenced in the columns of the Daily Jupiter, a powerful newspaper, the manager of which was very friendly to Mr. Slope's view of the case. The matter, however, had become too tedious for the readers of the Jupiter, and a little note had therefore been appended to one of Mr. Slope's most telling rejoinders, in which it had been stated that no further letters from the reverend gentleman could be inserted except as advertisements. Other methods of publication were, however, found less expensive than advertisements in the Jupiter, and the war went on merrily. Mr. Slope declared that the main part of the consecration of a clergyman was the self-devotion of the inner man to the duties of the ministry. Mr. Arabin contended that a man was not consecrated at all, had indeed no single attribute of a clergyman, unless he became so through the imposition of some bishop's hands, who had become a bishop through the imposition of other hands, and so on in a direct line to one of the apostles. Each had repeatedly hung the other on the horns of a dilemma, but neither seemed to be a whit the worse for the hanging, and so the war went on merrily. Whether or no the near neighbourhood of the foe may have acted in any way as an inducement to Mr. Arabin to accept the living of St. Awold, we will not pretend to say. But it had at any rate been settled in Dr. Gwynne's library at Lazarus that he would accept it, and that he would lend his assistance towards driving the enemy out of Barchester, or, at any rate, silencing him while he remained there. Mr. Arabin intended to keep his rooms at Oxford, and to have the assistance of a curate at St. Awold, but he promised to give as much time as possible to the neighbourhood of Barchester, and from so great a man Dr. Grantley was quite satisfied with such a promise. It was no small part of the satisfaction derivable from such an arrangement that Bishop Proudie would be forced to institute into a living, immediately under his own nose, the enemy of his favourite chaplain. All through dinner the Archdeacon's good humour shone brightly in his face. He ate of the good things heartily, he drank wine with his wife and daughter, he talked pleasantly of his doings at Oxford, told his father-in-law that he ought to visit Dr. Gwynne at Lazarus, and launched out again in praise of Mr. Arabin. "Is Mr. Arabin married, Papa?" asked Griselda. "No, my dear. The fellow of a college is never married." "Is he a young man, Papa?" "About 40, I believe," said the Archdeacon. "Oh," said Griselda. Had her father said 80, Mr. Arabin would not have appeared to her to be very much older. When the two gentlemen were left alone over their wine, Mr. Harding told his tale of woe. But even this, sad as it was, did not much diminish the Archdeacon's good humour, though it greatly added to his pugnacity. "He can't do it," said Dr. Grantley over and over again, as his father-in-law explained to him the terms on which the new warden of the hospital was to be appointed. "He can't do it. What he says is not worth the trouble of listening to. He can't alter the duties of the place." "Who can't?" asked the ex-warden. "Neither the bishop nor the chaplain, nor yet the bishop's wife, who, I take it, has really more to say to such matters than either of the other two. The whole body corporate of the palace together have no power to turn the warden of the hospital into a Sunday schoolmaster." "But the bishop has the power to appoint whom he pleases, and—" "I don't know that. I rather think he'll find he has no such power. Let him try it, and see what the press will say. For once we shall have the popular cry on our side. But Proudie, ass as he is, knows the world too well to get such a hornet's nest about his ears." Mr. Harding winced at the idea of the press. He had had enough of that sort of publicity, and was unwilling to be shown up a second time either as a monster or as a martyr. He gently remarked that he hoped the newspapers would not get hold of his name again, and then suggested that perhaps it would be better that he should abandon his object. "I am getting old," said he, "and after all I doubt whether I am fit to undertake new duties." "New duties?" said the Archdeacon. "Don't I tell you there shall be no new duties?" "Or perhaps old duties either. said Mr. Harding. I think I will remain content as I am. The picture of Mr. Slope carting away the rubbish was still present to his mind. The Archdeacon drank off his glass of claret and prepared himself to be energetic. "I do hope," said he, "that you are not going to be so weak as to allow such a man as Mr. Slope to deter you from doing what you know it is your duty to do. You know it is your duty to resume your place at the hospital now that Parliament has so settled the stipend as to remove those difficulties which induced you to resign it. You cannot deny this, and should your timidity now prevent you from doing so, your conscience will hereafter never forgive you." And as he finished this clause of speech, he pushed over the bottle to his companion. "Your conscience will never forgive you," he continued. "You resigned the place from conscientious scruples which I greatly respected, though I did not share them. All your friends respected them, and you left your old house as rich in reputation as you were ruined in fortune. It is now expected that you will return. Dr. Gwynne was saying only the other day, 'Dr. Gwynne does not reflect how much older a man I am now than when he last saw me.'" "Old? Nonsense," said the Archdeacon. "You never thought yourself old till you listened to the impudent trash of that coxcomb at the palace." "I shall be 65 if I live till November," said Mr. Harding. "And 75 if you live till November 10 years, said the Archdeacon. "And you bid fair to be as efficient then as you were 10 years ago. But for heaven's sake, let us have no pretence in this matter. Your plea of old age is only a pretence. But you're not drinking your wine. It is only a pretence. The fact is, you are half afraid of this Slope, and would rather subject yourself to comparative poverty and discomfort than come to blows with a man who will trample on you if you let him." "I certainly don't like coming to blows if I can help it." "Nor I neither, but sometimes we can't help it. This man's object is to induce you to refuse the hospital, that he may put some creature of his own into it, that he may show his power and insult us all by insulting you, whose cause and character are so intimately bound up with that of the chapter. You owe it to us all to resist him in this, even if you have no solicitude for yourself. But surely for your own sake you will not be so lily-livered as to fall into this trap which he has baited for you, and let him take the very bread out of your mouth without a struggle?" Mr. Harding did not like being called lily-livered, and was rather inclined to resent it. "I doubt there is any true courage," said he, "in squabbling for money. If honest men did not squabble for money in this wicked world of ours, the dishonest men would get it all, and I do not see that the cause of virtue would be much improved. No, we must use the means which we have. If we were to carry your argument home, we might give away every shilling of revenue which the Church has, and I presume you are not prepared to say that the Church would be strengthened by such a sacrifice." The Archdeacon filled his glass and then emptied it, drinking with much reverence a silent toast to the well-being and permanent security of those temporalities which were so dear to his soul. "I think all quarrels between a clergyman and his bishop should be avoided," said Mr. Harding. "I think so too, but it is quite as much the duty of the bishop to look to that as of his inferior. I tell you what, my friend, I'll see the bishop in this matter, that is, if you will allow me, and you may be sure that I will not compromise you. My opinion is that all this trash about the Sunday schools and the sermons has originated wholly with Slope and Mrs. Proudie, and that the bishop knows nothing about it. The bishop can't very well refuse to see me, and I'll come upon him when he has neither his wife nor his chaplain by him. I think you'll find that it will end in his sending you the appointment without any condition whatever. And as to the seats in the cathedral, we may safely leave that to Mr. Dean. I believe the fool positively thinks that the bishop would walk away with the cathedral if he pleased. And so the matter was arranged between them. Mr. Harding had come expressly for advice, and therefore felt himself bound to take the advice given him. He had known, moreover, beforehand, that the Archdeacon would not hear of his giving the matter up, and accordingly, though he had in perfect good faith put forward his own views, he was prepared to yield. They therefore went into the drawing-room in good humour with each other, and the evening passed pleasantly in prophetic discussions on the future wars of Arabin and Slope. The frogs and the mice would be nothing to them, nor the angers of Agamemnon and Achilles. How the Archdeacon rubbed his hands and plumed himself on the success of his last move. He could not himself descend into the arena with Slope, but Arabin would have no such scruples. Arabin was exactly the man for such a work, and the only man whom he knew that was fit for it. The Archdeacon's good humour and high buoyancy continued till, when reclining on his pillow, Mrs. Grantley commenced to give him her view of the state of affairs at Barchester. And then certainly he was startled. The last words he said that night were as follows: "If she does, by heaven I'll never speak to her again. She dragged me into the mire once, but I'll not pollute myself with such filth as that." And the Archdeacon gave a shudder which shook the whole room, so violently was he convulsed with the thought which then agitated his mind. Now in this matter the widow Bold was scandalously ill-treated by her relatives. She had spoken to the man 3 or 4 times, and had expressed her willingness to teach in a Sunday school. Such was the full extent of her sins in the matter of Mr. Slope. Poor Eleanor! But time will show. The next morning Mr. Harding returned to Barchester, no further word having been spoken in his hearing respecting Mr. Slope's acquaintance with his younger daughter. But he observed that the Archdeacon at breakfast was less cordial than he had been on the preceding evening. Chapter 15. The Widow's Suitors. Mr. Slope lost no time in availing himself of the bishop's permission to see Mr. Quiverful, and it was in his interview with this worthy pastor that he first learnt that Mrs. Bold was worth the wooing. He rode out to Puddingdale to communicate to the embryo warden the goodwill of the bishop in his favour, and during the discussion on the matter it was not unnatural that the pecuniary resources of Mr. Harding and his family should become the subject of remark. Mr. Quiverful, with his 14 children and 400 a year, was a very poor man, and the prospect of this new preferment, which was to be held together with his living, was very grateful to him. To what clergyman so circumstanced would not such a prospect be very grateful? But Mr. Quiverful had long been acquainted with Mr. Harding, and had received kindness at his hands, so that his heart misgave him as he thought of supplanting a friend at the hospital. Nevertheless, he was extremely civil, cringingly civil, to Mr. Slope, treated him quite as the great man, entreated of this great man to do him the honour to drink of a glass of sherry, at which, as it was very poor Marsala, the now pampered Slope turned up his nose, and ended by declaring his extreme obligation to the bishop and Mr. Slope, and his great desire to accept the hospital if it were certainly the case that Mr. Harding had refused it. What man, as needy as Mr. Quiverful, would have been more disinterested? Mr. Harding did positively refuse it, said Mr. Slope, with a certain air of offended dignity, when he heard of the conditions to which the appointment is now subjected. Of course, you understand, Mr. Quiverful, that the same conditions will be imposed upon yourself. Mr. Quiverful cared nothing for the conditions. He would have undertaken to preach any number of sermons Mr. Slope might have chosen to dictate, and to pass every remaining hour of his Sundays within the walls of a Sunday school. What sacrifices, or at any rate what promises, would have been too much to make for such an addition to his income and for such a house? But his mind still recurred to Mr. Harding. "To be sure," said he, "Mr. Harding's daughter is very rich, and why should he trouble himself with the hospital?" "You mean Mrs. Grantley?" said Slope. "I meant his widowed daughter," said the other. Mrs. Bold has 1,200 a year of her own, and I suppose Mr. Harding means to live with her." 1,200 a year of her own? said Slope, and very shortly afterwards took his leave, avoiding, as far as it was possible for him to do, any further allusion to the hospital. 1,200 a year, said he to himself as he rode slowly home. If it were the fact that Mrs. Bold had 1,200 a year of her own, what a fool would he be to oppose her father's return to his old place. The train of Mr. Slope's ideas will probably be plain to all my readers. Why should he not make the 1,200 a year his own? And if he did so, would it not be well for him to have a father-in-law comfortably provided with the good things of this world? Would it not, moreover, be much more easy for him to gain the daughter if he did all in his power to forward the father's views? These questions presented themselves to him in a very forcible way, and yet there were many points of doubt. If he resolved to restore to Mr. Harding his former place, he must take the necessary steps for doing so at once. He must immediately talk over the bishop, quarrel on the matter with Mrs. Proudie, whom he knew he could not talk over, and let Mr. Quiverful know that he had been a little too precipitate as to Mr. Harding's positive refusal. That he could effect all this, he did not doubt, but he did not wish to effect it for nothing. He did not wish to give way to Mr. Harding and then be rejected by the daughter. He did not wish to lose one influential friend before he had gained another. And thus he rode home, meditating many things in his mind. It occurred to him that Mrs. Bold was sister-in-law to the Archdeacon, and that not even for 1,200 a year would he submit to that imperious man. A rich wife was a great desideratum to him, but success in his profession was still greater. There were, moreover, other rich women who might be willing to become wives, and after all, this 1,200 a year might, when inquired into, melt away into some small sum utterly beneath his notice. But then also he remembered that Mrs. Bold had a son. Another circumstance also much influenced him, though it was one which may almost be said to have influenced him against his will. The vision of the Signora Neroni was perpetually before his eyes. It would be too much to say that Mr. Slope was lost in love, but yet he thought, and kept continually thinking, that he had never seen so beautiful a woman. He was a man whose nature was open to such impulses, and the wiles of the Italianicized charmer had been thoroughly successful in imposing upon his thoughts. We will not talk about his heart, not that he had no heart, but because his heart had little to do with his present feelings. His taste had been pleased, his eyes charmed, and his vanity gratified. He had been dazzled by a sort of loveliness which he had never before seen, and had been caught by an easy, free, voluptuous manner which was perfectly new to him. He had never been so tempted before, and the temptation was now irresistible. He had not owned to himself that he cared for this woman more for others around him, but yet he thought often of the time when he might see her next, and made, almost unconsciously, little cunning plans for seeing her frequently. He had called at Dr. Stanhope's house the day after the bishop's party, and then the warmth of his admiration had been fed with fresh fuel. If the signora had been kind in her manner and flattering in her speech when lying upon the bishop's sofa with the eyes of so many on her, she had been much more so in her mother's drawing-room, with no one present but her sister to repress either her nature or her art. Mr. Slope had thus left her quite bewildered, and could not willingly admit into his brain any scheme, a part of which would be the necessity of his abandoning all further special friendship with this lady. And so he slowly rode along, very meditative. And here the author must beg it to be remembered that Mr. Slope was not in all things a bad man. His motives, like those of most men, were mixed, and though his conduct was generally very different from that we would wish to praise, it was actuated perhaps as often as that of the majority of the world by a desire to do his duty. He believed in the religion which he taught, harsh, unpalatable, uncharitable as that religion was. He believed those whom he wished to get under his hoof, the Grantleys and Gwynns of the church, to be the enemies of that religion. He believed himself to be a pillar of strength, destined to do great things, and with that subtle, selfish, ambiguous sophistry to which the minds of all men are so subject, he had taught himself to think that in doing much for the promotion of his own interests, he was doing much also for the promotion of religion. But Mr. Slope had never been an immoral man. Indeed, he had resisted temptations to immorality with a strength of purpose that was creditable to him. He had early in life devoted himself to works which were not compatible with the ordinary pleasures of youth, and he had abandoned such pleasures not without a struggle. It must therefore be conceived that he did not admit to himself that he warmly admired the beauty of a married woman without heartfelt stings of conscience, and to pacify that conscience he had to teach himself that the nature of his admiration was innocent. And thus he rode along, meditative and ill at ease. His conscience had not a word to say against his choosing the widow and her fortune. That he looked upon as a godly work rather than otherwise, as a deed which, if carried through, would redound to his credit as a Christian. On that side lay no future remorse, no conduct which he might probably have to forget, no inward stings. If it should turn out to be really the fact that Mrs. Bold had 1,200 a year at her own disposal, Mr. Slope would rather look upon it as a duty which he owed his religion to make himself the master of the wife and the money, as a duty, too, in which some amount of self-sacrifice would be necessary. He would have to give up his friendship with the signora, his resistance to Mr. Harding, his antipathy. No, he found on mature self-examination that he could not bring himself to give up his antipathy to Dr. Grantley. He would marry the lady as the enemy of her brother-in-law, if such an arrangement suited her. If not, she must look elsewhere for a husband. It was with such resolve as this that he reached Barchester. He would at once ascertain what the truth might be as to the lady's wealth, and having done this, he would be ruled by circumstances in his conduct respecting the hospital. If he found that he could turn round and secure the place for Mr. Harding without much self-sacrifice, he would do so. But if not, he would woo the daughter in opposition to the father. But in no case would he succumb to the Archdeacon. He saw his horse taken round to the stable, and immediately went forth to commence his inquiries. To give Mr. Slope his due, he was not a man who ever let much grass grow under his feet. Poor Eleanor! She was doomed to be the intended victim of more schemes than one. About the time that Mr. Slope was visiting the vicar of Puddingdale, a discussion took place respecting her charms and wealth at Dr. Stanhope's house in the Close. There had been morning callers there, and people had told some truth and also some falsehood respecting the property which John Bold had left behind him. By degrees the visitors went, and as the doctor went with them, and as the doctor's wife had not made her appearance, Charlotte Stanhope and her brother were left together. He was sitting idly at the table, scrawling caricatures of Barchester notables, then yawning, then turning over a book or two, and evidently at a loss how to kill his time without much labour. "You haven't done much, Bertie, about getting any orders," said his sister. "Orders?" said he. "Who on earth is there at Barchester to give one orders? Who among the people here could possibly think it worth his while to have his head done up into marble?" "Then you mean to give up your profession?" said she. "No, I don't," said he, going on with some absurd portrait of the bishop. "Look at that, Lottie. Isn't it the little man all over, apron and all? I'd go on with my profession at once, as you call it, if the governor would set me up with a studio in London. But as to sculpture of Barchester, I suppose half the people here don't know what a torso means." "The governor will not give you a shilling to start you in London," said Lottie. "Indeed, he can't give you what would be sufficient, for he has not got it. But you might start yourself very well if you pleased." "How the deuce am I to do it?" said he. "To tell the truth, Bertie, you'll never make a penny by any profession." "That's what I often think myself," said he, not in the least offended. "Some men have a great gift of making money, but they can't spend it. Others can't put 2 shillings together, but they have a great talent for all sorts of outlay. I begin to think that my genius is wholly in the latter line." "How do you mean to live, then?" asked the sister. "I suppose I must regard myself as a young raven and look for heavenly manna. Besides, we have all got something when the governor goes." "Yes, you'll have enough to supply yourself with gloves and boots, that is, if the Jews have not got the possession of it all. I believe they have the most of it already. I wonder, Bertie, at your indifference, that you, with your talents and personal advantages, should never try to settle yourself in life. I look forward with dread to the time when the governor must go. Mother and Madeline and I, we shall be poor enough, but you will have absolutely nothing." "Sufficient for the day is the evil thereof," said Bertie. "Will you take my advice?" said his sister. "Cela dépend," said the brother. "Will you marry a wife with money?" "At any rate," said he, "I won't marry one without. Wives with money aren't so easy to get nowadays. The parsons will pick 'em all up." "And a parson will pick up the wife I mean for you if you do not look quickly about it. The wife I mean is Mrs. Bold." "Whew!" whistled Bertie. "A widow?" "She is very beautiful," said Charlotte. "With a son and heir all ready to my hand," said Bertie. "A baby that will very likely die," said Charlotte. "I don't see that," said Bertie. "But however he may live for me, I don't wish to kill him, only it must be owned that a ready-made family is a drawback." "There is only one, after all," pleaded Charlotte. "And that a very little one, as the maidservant said," rejoined Bertie. "Beggars mustn't be choosers, Bertie. You can't have everything." "God knows I am not unreasonable," said he, "nor yet opinionated, and if you'll arrange it all for me, Lottie, I'll marry the lady. Only mark this, the money must be sure, and the income at my own disposal, at any rate for the lady's life." Charlotte was explaining to her brother that he must make love for himself if he meant to carry on the matter, and was encouraging him to do so by warm eulogiums on Eleanor's beauty when the signora was brought into the drawing-room. When at home and subject to the gaze of none but her own family, she allowed herself to be dragged about by two persons, and her two bearers now deposited her on the sofa. She was not quite so grand in her apparel as she had been at the bishop's party, but yet she was dressed with much care, and though there was a look of care and pain about her eyes, she was, even by daylight, extremely beautiful. "Well, Madeline, so I'm going to be married," Bertie began as soon as the servants had withdrawn. "There's no other foolish thing left that you haven't done," said Madeline, "and therefore you are quite right to try that." "Oh, you think it's a foolish thing, do you?" said he. "There's Lottie advising me to marry by all means, but on such a subject your opinion ought to be the best. You have experience to guide you." "Yes, I have," said Madeline, with a sort of harsh sadness in her tone. "Excuse me." Which seemed to say, "What is it to you if I am sad? I have never asked your sympathy." Bertie was sorry when he saw that she was hurt by what he said, and he came and squatted on the floor close before her face to make his peace with her. "Come, Mad, I was only joking, you know that. But in sober earnest, Lottie is advising me to marry. She wants me to marry this Mrs. Bold. She's a widow with lots of tin, a fine baby, a beautiful complexion, and the George and Dragon Hotel up in the High Street. By Jove, Lottie, if I marry her, I'll keep the public house myself. It's just the life to suit me." "What?" said Madeline. "That vapid, swarthy creature in the widow's cap, who looked as though her clothes had been stuck on her back with a pitchfork." The signora never allowed any woman to be beautiful. "Instead of being vapid," said Lottie, "I call her a very lovely woman. She was by far the loveliest woman in the rooms the other night. That is, excepting you, Madeline." Even the compliment did not soften the asperity of the maimed beauty. "Every woman is charming according to Lottie," she said. "I never knew an eye with so little true appreciation. In the first place, what woman on earth could look well in such a thing as that she had on her head? Of course she wears a widow's cap, but she'll put that off when Bertie marries her." "I don't see any of course in it," said Madeline. "The death of 20 husbands should not make me undergo such a penance. It is as much a relic of paganism as the sacrifice of a Hindu woman at the burning of her husband's body. If not so bloody, it is quite as barbarous and quite as useless." "But you don't blame her for that," said Bertie. "She does it because it's the custom of the country. People would think ill of her if she didn't do it." "Exactly," said Madeline. "She is just one of those English nonentities who would tie her head up in a bag for 3 months every summer if her mother and her grandmother had tied up their heads before her. It would never occur to her to think whether there was any use in submitting to such a nuisance." "It's very hard in a country like England for a young woman to set herself in opposition to prejudices of that sort," said the prudent Charlotte. "What you mean is that it's very hard for a fool not to be a fool," said Madeline. Bertie Stanhope had been so much knocked about the world from his earliest years that he had not retained much respect for the gravity of English customs. But even to his mind, an idea presented itself that, perhaps in a wife, true British prejudice would not in the long run be less agreeable than Anglo-Italian freedom from restraint. He did not exactly say so, but he expressed the idea in another way. "I fancy," said he, "that if I were to die and then walk, I should think that my widow looked better in one of those caps than in any other kind of headdress." "Yes, and you'd fancy also that she could do nothing better than shut herself up and cry for you, or else burn herself. But she would think differently. She'd probably wear one of those horrid she-helmets because she'd want the courage not to do so, but she'd wear it with a heart longing for the time when she might be allowed to throw it off. I hate such shallow, false pretences. For my part, I would let the world say what it pleased, and show no grief if I felt none, and perhaps not if I did. But wearing a widow's cap won't lessen her fortune, said Charlotte. Or increase it, said Madeline. Then why on earth does she do it? But Lottie's object is to make her put it off, said Bertie. If it be true that she has got 1,200 a year quite at her own disposal, and she not be utterly vulgar in her manners, I would advise you to marry her. I dare say she is to be had for the asking, and as you are not going to marry her for love, it doesn't much matter whether she is good-looking or not. As to your really marrying a woman for love, I don't believe you are fool enough for that. Oh, Madeline, exclaimed her sister. And, oh, Charlotte, said the other. You don't mean to say that no man can love a woman unless he be a fool? I mean very much the same thing, that any man who is willing to sacrifice his interest to get possession of a pretty face is a fool. Pretty faces are to be had cheaper than that. I hate your mawkish sentimentality, Lottie. You know as well as I do in what way husbands and wives generally live together. You know how far the warmth of conjugal affection can withstand the trial of a bad dinner, of a rainy day, or of the least privation which poverty brings with it. You know what freedom a man claims for himself, what slavery he would exact from his wife if he could. And you know also how wives generally obey. Marriage means tyranny on one side and deceit on the other. I say that a man is a fool to sacrifice his interests for such a bargain. A woman, too, generally, has no other way of living. But Bertie has no other way of living, said Charlotte. Then in God's name let him marry Mrs. Bold, said Madeline, and so it was settled between them. But let the gentle-hearted reader be under no apprehension whatsoever. It is not destined that Eleanor shall marry Mr. Slope or Bertie Stanhope. And here, perhaps, it may be allowed to the novelist to explain his views on a very important point in the art of telling tales. He ventures to reprobate that system which goes so far to violate all proper confidence between the author and his readers, by maintaining nearly to the end of the third volume a mystery as to the fate of their favourite personage. Nay, more and worse than this is too frequently done. Have not often the profoundest efforts of genius been used to baffle the aspirations of the reader, to raise false hopes and false fears, and to give rise to expectations which are never to be realised? Are not promises all but made of delightful horrors, in lieu of which the writer produces nothing but most commonplace realities in his final chapter? And is there not a species of deceit in this to which the honesty of the present age should lend no countenance? And what can be the worth of that solicitude which a peep into the third volume can utterly dissipate? What the value of those literary charms which are absolutely destroyed by their enjoyment? When we have once learned what was that picture before which was hung Mrs. Ratcliffe's solemn curtain, we feel no further interest about either the frame or the veil. They are to us merely a receptacle for old bones, an inappropriate coffin which we would wish to have decently buried or out of our sight. And then, how grievous a thing it is to have the pleasure of your novel destroyed by the ill-considered triumph of a previous reader. Oh, you needn't be alarmed for Augusta. Of course she accepts Gustavus in the end. How very ill-natured you are, Susan, says Kitty, with tears in her eyes. I don't care a bit about it now. Dear Kitty, if you will read my book, you may defy the ill nature of your sister. There shall be no secret that she can tell you. Nay, take the last chapter if you please. Learn from its pages all the results of our troubled story, and the story shall have lost none of its interest, if indeed there be any interest in it to lose. Our doctrine is that the author and the reader should move along together in full confidence with each other. Let the personages of the drama undergo ever so complete a comedy of errors among themselves, but let the spectator never mistake the Syracusan for the Ephesian, otherwise he is one of the dupes, and the part of a dupe is never dignified. I would not, for the value of this chapter, have it believed by a single reader that my Eleanor could bring herself to marry Mr. Slope, or that she should be sacrificed to a Bertie Stanhope. But among the good folk of Barchester, many believed both the one and the other. And that is where we shall take a break. Thank you for listening so far. Okay, Anthony Trollope is very much like, it's alright, we'll do spoilers. It's fine. I don't like people spoiling things for people, so I'm going to spoil it for you. Love it. Absolutely love it. Anyway, we shall go to a break. And yeah, we shall see you in about 5 minutes. Go do break related things and see you in a bit. Goodbye for now. we're back. Welcome back. I completely forgot to do the break command. Apologies, everybody. Oops. Thank you for doing it, Sam. Yeah, I was like, I need to do that, and then just didn't. But yes, hello everybody. I hope we have done break-related things, got drinks, done stuff. Sorry, that was me talking into my water. But yeah. We are now, we're about a third through the book, I would say, actually. Yeah. Nice. How do we know to get tea and Happis? I don't know. Yeah, we're actually getting through the book quite nicely. Very good, very good. The next chapter also has a really rather fantastic title, so yeah. Oh, my neck, sorry if that clicking came across on the mic. Yeah, I'm gonna do, I think, one more chapter that I've bookmarked? Is it? I don't know, hang on 1 second. Yes. Oh, is it? Yeah. You're able to refill your water without being told to. Hooray! Everybody is capable of doing adult stuff, I don't know, human stuff. Yes, I shall do one more chapter and then I shall stop, because, as I said before, I am doing a concert on Saturday, which I probably need my voice. I don't know what is. I'm in a weird mood today. Yes, concert Saturday, need voice, so should probably not keep talking. So yeah, if we're all back and braked correctly, we shall continue with possibly my favourite title of a chapter yet, which is pretty great. You're not being an adult, you're posting biscuits with intent to offend. Oh no, Andy, what are you doing? Gremlin. Right. Let us continue with Chapter 16. Baby Worship. Diddle 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 dum dum dum, said or sung Eleanor Bold. Diddle 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 dum dum dum, continued Mary Bold, taking up the second part of this in this concerted piece. The only audience at the concert was the baby, who, however, gave such vociferous applause that the performers, presuming it to amount to an encore, commenced again. Diddle 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 dum dum dum, hasn't he got lovely legs? Said the rapturous mother. Simmered Mary, burying her lips in the little fellow's fat neck by way of kissing him. Simmered the mamma, burying her lips also in his fat, round, short legs. He's a doughty little bold darling, so he is, and he has the nicest little pink legs in all the world, so he has. And the simmering and the kissing went on over again, as though the ladies were very hungry and determined to eat him. Well then, he's his own mother's own darling. Well, he shall. Oh, Mary, did you ever see? What am I to do? My naughty, 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 naughty little Johnny. All these energetic exclamations were elicited by the delight of the mother in finding that her son was strong enough and mischievous enough to pull all her hair out from under her cap. He's been and pulled down all Mamma's hair, and he's the naughtiest, naughtiest, naughtiest little man that ever... A regular service of baby worship was going on. Mary Bold was sitting on a low easy chair with the boy in her lap, and Eleanor was kneeling before the object of her idolatry. As she tried to cover up the little fellow's face with her long, glossy, dark brown locks, and permitted him to pull them hither and thither as he would, she looked very beautiful in spite of the widow's cap which she still wore. There was a quiet, enduring, graceful sweetness about her face, which grew so strongly upon those who knew her as to make the great praise of her beauty which came from her old friends appear marvellously exaggerated to those who were only slightly acquainted with her. Her loveliness was like that of many landscapes, which require to be often seen to be fully enjoyed. There was a depth of dark, clear brightness in her eyes which was lost upon a quick observer, a character about her mouth which only showed itself to those with whom she familiarly conversed, a glorious form of head the perfect symmetry of which required the eye of an artist for its appreciation. She had none of that dazzling brilliancy, of that voluptuous Rubens beauty, of that pearly whiteness and those vermilion tints which immediately entranced with the power of a basilisk men who came within reach of Madame Neroni. It was all but impossible to resist the Signora, but no one was called upon for any resistance towards Eleanor. You might begin to talk to her as though she were your sister, and it would not be till your head was on your pillow that the truth and intensity of her beauty would flash upon you, that the sweetness of her voice would come upon your ear. A sudden half-hour with the Neroni was like falling into a pit, an evening spent with Eleanor like an unexpected ramble in some quiet fields of asphodel. "We'll cover him up till there shan't be a morsel of his little nose to be seen," said the mother, stretching her streaming locks over the infant's face. The child screamed with delight, and kicked till Marybold was hardly able to hold him. At this moment the door opened, and Mr. Slope was announced. Up jumped Eleanor, and with a sudden quick motion of her hands pushed back her hair over her shoulders. It would have been perhaps better for her that she had not, for she thus showed more of her confusion than she would have done had she remained as she was. Mr. Slope, however, immediately recognised her loveliness, and thought to himself that, irrespective of her fortune, she would be an inmate that a man might well desire for his house, a partner for his bosom's care very well qualified to make care lie easy. Eleanor hurried out of the room to readjust her cap, muttering some unnecessary apology about her baby. And while she is gone, we will briefly go back and state what has been hitherto the results of Mr. Slope's meditations on his scheme of matrimony. His inquiries as to the widow's income had at any rate been so far successful as to induce him to determine to go on with the speculation. As regarded Mr. Harding, he had also resolved to do what he could without injury to himself. To Mrs. Proudie he determined not to speak on the matter, at least not at present. His object was to instigate a little rebellion on the part of the bishop. He thought that such a state of things would be advisable not only in respect to Messrs. Harding and Quiverful, but also in the affairs of the diocese generally. Mr. Slope was by no means of opinion that Dr. Proudie was fit to rule, but he conscientiously thought it wrong that his brother clergy should be subjected to petticoat government. He therefore made up his mind to infuse a little of his spirit into the bishop, sufficient to induce him to oppose his wife, though not enough to make him altogether insubordinate. He had therefore taken an opportunity of again speaking to his lordship about the hospital, and had endeavoured to make it appear that after all it would be unwise to exclude Mr. Harding from the appointment. Mr. Slope, however, had a harder task than he had imagined. Mrs. Proudie, anxious to assume to herself as much as possible of the merit of patronage, had written to Mrs. Quiverful, requesting her to call at the palace, and had then explained to that matron, with much mystery, condescension, and dignity, the good that was in store for her and her progeny. Indeed, Mrs. Proudie had been so engaged at the very time that Mr. Slope had been doing the same with the husband at Puddingdale Vicarage, and had thus in a measure committed herself. The thanks, the humility, the gratitude, the surprise of Mrs. Quiverful had been very overpowering. She had all but embraced the knees of her patroness, and had promised that the prayers of 14 unprovided babies, so Mrs. Quiverful had described her own family, the eldest of which was a stout young woman of 23, should be put up to heaven morning and evening for the munificent friend whom God had sent to them. Such incense as this was not unpleasing to Mrs. Proudie, and she made the most of it. She offered her general assistance to the 14 unprovided babies, and as if she had no doubt she should find them worthy, expressed a hope that the eldest of them would be fit to undertake tuition in her Sabbath schools, and altogether made herself a very great lady in the estimation of Mrs. Quiverful. Having done this, she thought it prudent to drop a few words before the bishop, letting him know that she had acquainted the Puddingdale family with their good fortune, so that he might perceive that he stood committed to the appointment. The husband well understood the ruse of his wife, but he did not resent it. He knew that she was taking the patronage out of his hands. He was resolved to put an end to her interference and reassume his powers. But then he thought this was not the best time to do it. He put off the evil hour, as many a man in similar circumstances has done before him. Such having been the case, Mr. Slope naturally encountered a difficulty in talking over the bishop, a difficulty, indeed, which he found could not be overcome except at the cost of a general outbreak at the palace. A general outbreak at the present moment might be a good policy, but it also might not. It was, at any rate, not a step to be lightly taken. He began by whispering to the bishop that he feared that public opinion would be against him if Mr. Harding did not reappear at the hospital. The bishop answered with some warmth that Mr. Quiverful had been promised the appointment on Mr. Slope's advice. "Not promised?" said Mr. Slope. "Yes, promised," replied the bishop, "and Mrs. Proudie has seen Mrs. Quiverful on the subject." This was quite unexpected on the part of Mr. Slope, but his presence of mind did not fail him, and he turned the statement to his own account. "Ah, my lord," said he, "we shall all be in scrapes if the ladies interfere." This was too much in unison with my lord's feelings to be altogether unpalatable, and yet such an allusion to interference demanded a rebuke. My lord was somewhat astounded also, though not altogether made miserable, by finding that there was a point of difference between his wife and his chaplain. "I don't know what you mean by interference," said the bishop mildly. "When Mrs. Proudie heard that Mr. Quiverful was to be appointed, it was not unnatural that she should wish to see Mrs. Quiverful about the schools. I really cannot say that I see any interference." "I only speak, my lord, for your own comfort," said Slope, "for your own comfort and dignity in the diocese. I can have no other motive. As far as personal feelings go, Mrs. Proudie is the best friend I have. I must always remember that. But still, in my present position, my first duty is to your lordship." "I'm sure of that, Mr. Slope, I am quite sure of that," said the bishop, mollified. "And you really think that Mr. Harding should have the hospital?" "Upon my word, I am inclined to think so. I am quite prepared to take upon myself the blame of first suggesting Mr. Quiverful's name. But since doing so, I have found that there is so strong a feeling in the diocese in favour of Mr. Harding that I think your lordship should give way. I hear also that Mr. Harding has modified the objections he first felt to your lordship's propositions. And as to what has passed between Mrs. Proudie and Mrs. Quiverful, the circumstances may be a little inconvenient, but I really do not think that that should weigh in a matter of so much moment." And thus the poor bishop was left in a dreadfully undecided state as to what he should do. His mind, however, slightly inclined itself to the appointment of Mr. Harding, seeing that by such a step he should have the assistance of Mr. Slope in opposing Mrs. Proudie. Such was the state of affairs at the palace when Mr. Slope called at Mrs. Bold's house and found her playing with her baby. When she ran out of the room, Mr. Slope began praising the weather to Mary Bold. Then he praised the baby and kissed him, and then he praised the mother, and then he praised Miss Bold herself. Miss Bold, however, was not long before she came back. "I have to apologise for calling in at so very early an hour," began Mr. Slope. "But I was really so anxious to speak to you that I hope you and Miss Bold will excuse me." Eleanor muttered something in which the words "certainly" and "of course" and "not early at all" were just audible, and then apologised for her own appearance, declaring with a smile that her baby was becoming such a big boy that he was quite unmanageable. "He's a great big naughty boy," said she to the child, "and we must send him away to a great big rough romping school where they have great big rods and do terrible things to naughty boys who don't do what their own mammas tell them." And she then commenced another course of kissing, being actuated thereto by the terrible idea of sending her child away, which her own imagination had depicted. "And where the masters don't have such beautiful long hair to be dishevelled," said Mr. Slope, taking up with the joke and playing a compliment at the same time. Eleanor thought he might as well have left the compliment alone, but she said nothing and looked nothing, being completely occupied as she was with the baby. "Let me take him," said Mary. "His clothes are nearly off his back with his romping." And so saying, she left the room with the child. Miss Bold had heard Mr. Slope say he had something pressing to say to Eleanor. "Excuse me." And thinking that she might be de trop, took this opportunity of getting herself out of the room. "Don't be long, Mary," said Eleanor as Miss Bold shut the door. "I am glad, Mrs. Bold, to have the opportunity of having 10 minutes' conversation with you alone," began Mr. Slope. Will you let me openly ask you a plain question?" "Certainly," said she, "and I am sure you will give me a plain and open answer." "Either that or none at all," said she, laughing. "My question is this, Mrs. Bold. Is your father really anxious to go back to the hospital?" "Why do you ask me?" said she. "Why don't you ask himself?" "My dear Miss Bold, I'll tell you why. There are wheels within wheels, all of which I would explain to you, only I fear there is not time. It is essentially necessary that I should have an answer to this question, otherwise I cannot know how to advance your father's wishes, and it is quite impossible that I should ask himself. No one can esteem your father more than I do, but I doubt if this feeling is reciprocal." It certainly was not. "I must be candid with you as the only means of avoiding ultimate consequences, which may be most injurious to Mr. Harding. I fear there is a feeling, I will not even call it a prejudice, with regard to myself in Barchester, which is not in my favour. You remember that sermon—" "Oh, Mr. Slope, we need not go back to that," said Eleanor. "For one moment, Mrs. Bold. It is not that I may talk of myself, but because it is so essential that you should understand how matters stand. That sermon may have been ill-judged. It was certainly misunderstood, but I will say nothing about that now. Only this, that it did give rise to a feeling against myself which your father shares with others. It may be that he has proper cause, but the result is that he is not inclined to meet me on friendly terms. I put it to yourself whether you do not know this to be the case." Eleanor made no answer, and Mr. Slope, in the eagerness of his address, edged his chair a little nearer to the widow's seat, unperceived by her. "Such being so," continued Mr. Slope, "I cannot ask him this question as I can ask it of you. In spite of my delinquencies since I came to Barchester, you have allowed me to regard you as a friend." Eleanor made a little motion with her head which was hardly confirmatory, but Mr. Slope, if he noticed it, did not appear to do so. To you I can speak openly and explain the feelings of my heart. This your father would not allow. Unfortunately, the bishop has thought it right that this matter of the hospital should pass through my hands. There have been some details to get up with which he would not trouble himself, and thus it has come to pass that I was forced to have an interview with your father on the matter." "I am aware of that," said Eleanor. "Of course," said he. "In that interview Mr. Harding left the impression on my mind that he did not wish to return to the hospital." "How could that be?" said Eleanor, at last stirred up to forget the cold propriety of demeanour which she had determined to maintain. "My dear Mrs. Bold, I give you my word that such was the case," said he, again getting a little nearer to her. "And what is more than that, before my interview with Mr. Harding, certain persons at the palace, I do not mean the bishop, had told me that such was the fact. I own I hardly believed it. I own I thought that your father would wish on every account, for conscience' sake, and for the sake of the old men, for old association, and the memory of dear days long gone by, on every account I thought that he would wish to resume his duties. But I was told that such was not his wish, and he certainly left me with the impression that I had been told the truth." "Well," said Eleanor, now sufficiently roused on the matter. "I hear Miss Bold's step," said Mr. Slope. "Would it be asking too great a favour to beg you to... I know you can manage anything with Miss Bold." Eleanor did not like the word manage, but still she went out and asked Mary to leave them alone for another quarter of an hour. "Thank you, Mrs. Bold. I am so very grateful for this confidence. Well, I left your father with this impression. Indeed, I may say that he made me understand that he declined the appointment." "Not the appointment," said Eleanor, "but I am sure he did not decline the appointment. But he said that he would not agree, that is, that he did not like the scheme about the schools and the services and all that. I am quite sure he never said that he wished to refuse the place." "Oh, Mrs. Bold," said Mr. Slope in a manner almost impassioned, "I would not for the world say so good a daughter a word against so good a father. But you must, for his sake, let me show you exactly how the matter stands at present. Mr. Harding was a little flurried when I told him of the bishop's wishes about the school. I did so, perhaps, with the less caution because you yourself had perfectly agreed with me on the same subject. He was a little put out and spoke warmly. 'Tell the bishop,' said he, 'that I quite disagree with him and shall not return to the hospital as such conditions are attached to it.' What he said was to that effect. Indeed, his words were, if anything, stronger than those. I had no alternative but to repeat them to his lordship, who said that he could look on them in no other light than a refusal. He also had heard the report that your father did not wish for the appointment, and putting all these things together, he thought he had no choice but to look for someone else. He has consequently offered the place to Mr. Quiverful." "Offered the place to Mr. Quiverful?" repeated Eleanor, her eyes suffused with tears. "Then, Mr. Slope, there is an end of it." "No, my friend, not so," said he. "It is to prevent such being the end of it that I am now here. I may, at any rate, presume that I have got an answer to my question, and that Mr. Harding is desirous of returning." "Desirous of returning? Of course he is," said Eleanor. "Of course he wishes to have back his house and his income and his place in the world, to have back what he gave up with such self-denying honesty, if he can have them without restraints on his conduct, to which at his age it would be impossible that he should submit. How can the bishop ask a man of his age to turn schoolmaster to a pack of children?" "Out of the question," said Mr. Slope, laughing slightly. "Of course no such demand shall be made on your father. I can at any rate promise you that I will not be the medium of any so absurd a requisition. We wished your father to preach in the hospital, as the inmates may naturally be too old to leave it, but even that shall not be insisted on. We wished also to attach a Sabbath-day school to the hospital, thinking that such an establishment could not but be useful under the surveillance of so good a clergyman as Mr. Harding, and also under your own. But, dear Mrs. Bold, we won't talk of these things now. One thing is clear, we must do what we can to annul this rash offer the bishop has made to Mr. Quiverful. Your father wouldn't see Quiverful, would he? Quiverful is an honourable man, and would not for a moment stand in your father's way. What? Said Eleanor. Ask a man with 14 children to give up his preferment? I am quite sure he will do no such thing. I suppose not, said Slope, and he again drew nearer to Mrs. Bold, so that now they were very close to each other. Eleanor did not think much about it, but instinctively moved away a little. How greatly would she have increased the distance could she have guessed what had been said about her at Plumstead. I suppose not, but it is out of the question that Quiverful should supersede your father, quite out of the question. The bishop has been too rash. An idea occurs to me, which may perhaps, with God's blessing, put us right. My dear Mrs. Bold, would you object to seeing... Would you object to seeing the bishop yourself? Why should not my father see him? Said Eleanor. She had once before in her life interfered in her father's affairs, and then not to much advantage. She was older now, and felt that she should take no step in a matter so vital to him without his consent. Why, to tell the truth, said Mr. Slope, with a look of sorrow, as though he greatly bewailed the want of charity in his patron, the bishop fancies that he has cause of anger against your father. I fear an interview would lead to further ill will. Why, said Eleanor, my father is the mildest, the gentlest man living. I only know, said Slope, that he has the best of daughters. So you would not see the bishop? As to getting an interview, I could manage that for you without the slightest annoyance to yourself. I could do nothing, Mr. Slope, without consulting my father. Ah, said he, that would be useless. You would then only be your father's messenger. Does anything occur to yourself? Something must be done. Your father shall not be ruined by so ridiculous a misunderstanding. Eleanor said that nothing occurred to her, but that it was very hard, and the tears came to her eyes and rolled down her cheeks. Mr. Slope would have given much to have had the privilege of drying them, but he had tact enough to know that he still had a great deal to do before he could even hope for any privilege with Mrs. Bold. It cuts me to the heart to see you so grieved, said he, but pray let me assure you that your father's interests shall not be sacrificed if it be possible for me to protect them. I will tell the bishop openly what are the facts. I will explain to him that he has hardly the right to appoint any other than your father, and will show him that if he does so, he will be guilty of great injustice. And you, Mrs. Bold, you will have the charity at any rate to believe this of me, that I am truly anxious for your father's welfare, for his and for your own. The widow hardly knew what answer to make. She was quite aware that her father would not be at all thankful to Mr. Slope. She had a strong wish to share her father's feelings, and yet she could not but acknowledge that Mr. Slope was very kind. Her father, who was generally so charitable to all men, who seldom spoke ill of anyone, had warned her against Mr. Slope, and yet she did not know how to abstain from thanking him. What interest could he have in the matter but that which he professed? Nevertheless, there was that in his manner which even she distrusted. She felt, she did not know why, that there was something about him which ought to put her on her guard. Mr. Slope read all this in her hesitating manner just as plainly as though she had opened her heart to him. It was the talent of the man that he could so read the inward feelings of women with whom he conversed. He knew that Eleanor was doubting him, and that if she thanked him she would only do so because she could not help it. But yet this did not make him angry or even annoy him. Rome was not built in a day. "I did not come for thanks," continued he, seeing her hesitation, "and do not want them, at any rate before they are merited. But this I do want, Mrs. Bold, that I may make to myself friends in this fold to which it has pleased God to call me as one of the humblest of his shepherds. If I cannot do so, my task here must indeed be a sad one. I will, at any rate, endeavour to deserve them." "I'm sure," said she, "you will soon make plenty of friends." She felt herself obliged to say something. "That will be nothing unless they are such as will sympathise with my feelings, unless they are such as I can reverence and admire and love. If the best and purest turn away from me, I cannot bring myself to be satisfied with the friendship of the less estimable. In such case I must live alone." "Oh, I'm sure you will not do that, Mr. Slope." Eleanor meant nothing, but it suited him to appear to think that some special allusion had been intended. "Indeed, Mrs. Bold, I shall live alone, quite alone as far as the heart is concerned, if those with whom I yearn to ally myself turn away from me. But enough of this. I have called you my friend, and I hope you will not contradict me. I trust the time may come when I may also call your father so. May God bless you, Mrs. Bold, you and your darling boy, and tell your father from me that what can be done for his interest shall be done." And so he took his leave, pressing the widow's hand rather more closely than usual. Circumstances, however, seemed just then to make this intelligible, and the lady did not feel called on to resent it. "I cannot understand him," said Eleanor to Mary Bold a few minutes afterwards. "I do not know whether he is a good man or a bad man, whether he is true or false." "Then give him the benefit of the doubt," said Mary, "and believe the best." "On the whole, I think I do," said Eleanor. "I think I do believe that he means well, and if so, it is a shame that we should revile him and make him miserable while he is among us. But, oh, Mary, I fear Papa will be disappointed in the hospital." And that is where we shall finish for tonight. Thank you very much for listening. I really like the fact that Trollope is just like, hey, spoilers, but she doesn't marry Slope and she doesn't marry Bertie. I appreciate an author who, gives his readers a favour. Does his readers a favour. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Yes, sorry, I put it in the wrong category, Sam. That was my bad. I completely forgot that reading aloud existed. I went on autopilot. Oh, excuse me. Oh. Yes, why does everybody know how much money she has? I like the fact that I hate the fact that just a woman's, status and financial security is just, public knowledge. It's like, oh, okay, alright. Fine. Still really enjoying this story. Yeah, I am too. It's getting juicy. There was a lot of, I felt it would be a little dry to start with, just because there's a lot of kind of ecclesiastical talk. But, yeah, no, this is quite fun. This was also the era when who you have over for tea would be in the local paper. That is very true. That is true. Gossip Central, basically. But yes. I hope you enjoyed. I certainly did. We should be back on Saturday with some short stories of some description. Sadly, probably no more haunted binoculars, which I very much enjoyed. Hadn't invented soap operas yet. Yeah, just their lives are soap operas. yeah, we should be back on Saturday. Sam will be reading some short stories. I sadly will not be around because, as I say, I have a concert. But all out the haunted binoculars. Sad times. But yes. Let me see. I assume Stephen is on. Doopy doopy doo. Oh, Shark Fists is on. We could always pop on over to Shark Fists if we fancied saying hello to Max. Although they have been up for like almost 5 hours, so let's go see Max. I will raid us over onto Max. Max is cool person. Max is fiddler. Although I don't think they're playing fiddle. I think they are playing Minecraft. So yeah, go on over, say hi, spread the love. And yeah, we shall see you on Saturday. Thank you all very much for being here. You're all wonderful people. And we shall see you again soon. Thank you and good night.